Hey Schmidlifers, I have a quick question for you. When was the last time you listened to your inner wise woman, aka your inner knowing, or maybe you know her better as your intuition? You know, she's the one who whispers to take a new route home, and then you later find out that there was a bad car accident on your usual route. Or she whispers that a certain person gives you the creeps and you have no idea why, but you definitely steer clear. She also is that gut feeling when a new opportunity feels just right, even if it does feel a little bit scary. And I will share that if we listen hard enough, you can also hear her whisper about what we really, really want. And I do mean whisper, because most often we've drowned out her voice with our very loud inner critic. And honestly, I like to call her the inner mean girl. That constant chatter, I know that you know her. She's that constant chatter about how you aren't good enough, how you aren't smart enough, how you're not young enough, all of those things. By the way, I'm just going to tell you that all of those things are false. You are all of those things. You are smart enough, good enough, and just the perfect age. But that inner chatter, that loud inner critic, is formed out of fear. That's our lizard brain hard at work trying to keep us safe. But your intuition, she's patient, but we really do need to learn to tune into what she's saying. And in doing that, we actually turn up her volume. And then we begin listening to what she says, trusting to what she says, and honoring her suggestions. And that brings me to today's guest, Marianne de Kleer. She is a Canadian expat living in the French countryside. And yes, you are going to be jealous when you hear more about it, just like I am. And her intuition told her exactly what she really wanted in the early stages of her career. But she took the way that most of us do. She chose what seemed like the practical choice. Raise your hand if you can relate. So let's head over to the conversation. Marianne de Kleer is a certified sophrologist and holistic wellness facilitator, working in both English and French. Marianne helps women in their middle years avoid burnout, reduce stress, and boost confidence through Sofrolology, a popular mind-body technique in Europe. In her holistic wellness mentoring, she encourages her clients to find their anchors, the things that bring them back to feeling their best. From mindful walking prompts in her creative walking tours to guided meditation recordings and feeling trackers, she loves to share the contents of her toolbox so that everyone can move into a vibrant way of living full of ease. That's an amazing intro, Marianne, and I'm so happy to be here and have you on the show.
Oh, thanks for reading it.
Yeah.
and it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Good.
As always.
Good. Yeah. So Marianne and I have known each other online for, I don't know how long, several years. We've been in each other's orbit for several years. Mm-hmm. I've been a client of yours. You've been a client of mine. It's just been a great relationship. Mm-hmm. And there are so many very interesting points in your story. We are doing a series right now called How They Got Started. And what I'm trying to do is help encourage other women who are in our middle years like we are, and maybe feeling a little bit stuck, maybe wanting to try something new, but feeling maybe that they've made a choice a long time ago and now here they are, but they're really wanting to try something new. And so these interviews, I'm hoping, will be encouragement to others. And your story is such an encouragement, especially within the last couple of years. But I really want to dive not way back. That made it sound like you were ancient, but back to when you started university right after high school. And you just shared this story with me right before we hit record. And can we just dive back into 18-year-old Marianne, or however old you were back then, and what was going on with you at that time?
Sure. So when I graduated from high school, I didn't actually know what I wanted to do, but all of my teachers knew that I was really into music. So they suggested that I start studying music. And so I auditioned and I got into university in the music program. And so I got my bachelor's degree in music to start off with.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the idea at the time was to become a performer or maybe a music historian. I wasn't quite sure. And then I needed to get a real job. I spent a year in France after university. And then when I came back, I thought, I should probably get a real job. And so I went back to school to get my bachelor's of education, to become a high school teacher, and doing my best to fit into the mold, so to speak, and do what was expected or right, or I don't know what.
Exactly. That whole quote, I'm using air quotes, real job.
Exactly.
A real job,
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And I was singing. I wasn't necessarily singing professionally, but I was singing, and slowly the professional singing started to take more and more of my time. And so while I was working as a teacher, it was becoming more and more difficult to do the singing because we needed to go on tour. We were recording CDs. We were doing all sorts of things. And so after 3 years of teaching, I threw in the towel.
Yeah.
And I quit. And I decided I need to do something else to support my singing. And that's where I started getting creative with working at the public library on call and working in an interior design office. All of these things were part-time and on call and very flexible. And that allowed me to continue singing.
Yeah, which sounds like that was a true passion of yours. If you gave up your real job.
So. Yeah, and that was a huge decision because I had invested all this time into becoming a teacher. I had the permanent contract and I could have easily stayed in that stream and all of the benefits that went with it. But after 3 years, I was already done. I could feel it like this is not life. I am eating, sleeping, working, and repeat. And that was not how I wanted to live life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was scary making that decision.
Oh, sure. I was just getting ready to say that probably was very scary. I'm thinking of the time when that was. Right now, there's so much going on with the world economy right now. But before 2020, and I'm sure after, it's been called the gig economy, where it's very common for people right out of high school or college to work several jobs so that they can live a life that they want to live. And here you were. I'm just trying to guess what year that was, the 90s, 80s?
In the 90s, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here you were trailblazing way before your time, making that choice. And that must have been scary. And what a courageous choice that was.
Yeah, I remember at that time, there was that book, The Artist's Way, that came out by Julia Cameron, and I went through that. And that actually really helped me to sort of come to this decision of choosing my life's direction. Yeah. And I think I told you just before we started recording here that I had gotten out of my Bachelor of Education program and I was having a conversation with a woman. And I said, yeah, so I've studied to become a teacher, but what I really want to do is buy a house in France. And she said, oh, Marianne, don't become a teacher. Just go buy the house in France.
Oh my gosh.
Skip this episode of your life. You don't need it.
Wow. What? Are you still in contact with her? Because
no, I'm not. No, I wish
Darn.
I were.
I know. Because that would be such a wonderful thing to share with you, because I'm going to jump right in. You do own a house in France now.
Yeah. So that came later. That came actually after I quit my teaching job. I started doing a design program because I was interested in interior design. And in the summer between my 2 years of study, we went to France. I went with a friend and we looked at houses. And it was a business idea we had at the time. And we ended up buying a house in France.
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying.
Time ago.
So that was, were you doing retreats then? I'm like trying to go off of memory here.
Yeah. So we bought the house with the intention of fully renovating it because it needed quite a lot of work. And the idea was to have a place where we could have retreats, like singing retreats, yoga retreats, art, painting retreats, and just have people come to France, stay in the countryside with us. We'd cook delicious meals and show people around and travel around, explore things. And we did do that for a few years, just in the summertime. Yeah.
Right. I'm imagining right now listeners raising their hand saying, I want to go. I want to go. Because I know when I hear that, it's wow, retreat in the French countryside sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was really lovely. People coming from mostly North America, mostly the States and Canada, but we did have a few other people as well.
And so things shifted and changed again, right? And so as we're traveling through your life and looking at the choices that you made and the shifts that have happened, and hear this, what you're saying you wanted to do, it sounds like it shifted again. And so tell me, you don't have to dive into how all that shifted, but just like, what am I trying to ask? What was next? After
I was working as a singer and doing my little side gigs to make that happen, and then coming to France in the summertime. And then I met my French husband, initially online, and then I came and we met in person, and it was very natural right from the start. So then the shift started to happen, like how to move to France. So that was the big shift at age 40, leaving my country, all my friends and family behind.
Wow.
To an unknown thing. Like I was just blindly moving to France. Of course, I had a bit of experience in France because I already owned a house here, but it was, like full-time living somewhere else is quite different than just visiting in the summertime.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. We decided that instead of having him come to Canada, it was easier for me to come to France. And so that was the big shift. And it felt like anything could happen. It was like a whole world of possibility in front of me. And I had no idea what I was going to do once I got to France, but I felt like it was time. Like I had been singing for 17 years and I felt like it was time to move on into new adventures. And I think I was ready for a change of scenery as well. So
yeah.
So I took the plunge and moved.
Wow. So I've just moved cross country, and I can't imagine moving to another country. So that's a big move and a big decision to leave your family and friends in the country where you were born and to start fresh.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I whittled down all of my belongings to just 5 cardboard boxes.
Oh my gosh.
And 2 suitcases. That's all I had.
Wow.
It was big.
Wow. Wow. Marianne, I'm just thinking, wow, you are a very courageous woman. My word. I'm just kind of, wow. So that was 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Over 12 years ago. It was 2012. Yeah.
Wow.
Or 2009. Sorry. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. So when you were in France, is that when you decided then to go into becoming a wellness facilitator? Was that your next step?
Not at all. No.
Oh, okay.
Not at all. So I arrived in France and I thought, okay, I have to start working. And I thought maybe I would try singing. So I did I do a lot of auditions and I got on the list, so to speak, of a couple of different groups. But while I was waiting for those calls to come in, for gigs to come up, I needed to start making money. So I ended up teaching English in the business setting, going into businesses. And I really enjoyed that, but it was not sustainable in terms of income. Like I would have been difficult to make a full-time living off of it. And so I did it for about a year and a half, and I just started looking for another job. And I thought to myself, I would love to work in the arts if possible. And I would love to work in music if possible, classical music if possible, singing if possible, maybe me not singing, but something related to singing. And I ended up finding a job in a music center. It was a vocal arts center. And we had a vocal ensemble in residence. We ran a number of different festivals, and I became the communications and marketing manager for this music center in this quaint little village. And I did that for over 7 years, which really gave me a lot of confidence in my French language skills, also just in marketing and communications. and in running events and all that kind of thing. Like I learned so much from that job. It also stressed me out. I came near to burnout.
Yeah, I'm sure. I come from a background in marketing, communications, and events and all that. So yeah, it can be very stressful for sure.
Yeah. And it was actually smack dab in the middle of that job, say 3 or 4 years into it, that I actually discovered sophrology. And it was because work was getting stressful and we had a merger, I had a new boss, and I started having panic attacks for the first time in my life.
Oh, goodness.
The first one happened at a staff meeting. And so in front of all of my colleagues. And I thought, this is not good. I need to take care of myself here. And a colleague suggested that I see a sophrologist. And so that I took her advice and I called up a sophrologist and I saw her like once a week for a couple of months. And that was a very transformative experience for me. That became the sort of seed, I think, that was planted, so that when I eventually quit that job a few years later, I knew the direction that I wanted to go in because it had brought so much to me and I want to be able to share that with others.
Yeah. So here in the States, I have a lot of listeners in all over the world, but mostly in the States and Canada. Could you please explain what sophrology is to those of us who don't know? I didn't know until you told me, so I find it very intriguing.
Yeah, no, it's a kind of a strange word as well. So it's a mind-body technique that's really super popular here in France. It was developed by a neuropsychiatrist in 1960, and it uses a number of different things that probably most listeners will be familiar with, like gentle movement, breath work, and then guided visualizations and positive visualizations. And so each session has a combination of those kinds of exercises. And it's really helpful in reducing stress and boosting confidence and really tackling all sorts of things. I have people coming to me for insomnia, or they might be feeling stressed at work, or like people doing mental preparation for an event. Like here in France, prenatal sophrology is very popular as well. People who are going to give birth.
Wow.
And so, that's the sort of nuts and bolts of it. It's been practiced by millions of people, mostly in France, maybe a bit in Switzerland and Belgium. It's specifically very francophone, like French centered, and it's slowly being brought out into the English speaking world, but it's still not very well known.
Yeah. Yes. When you shared it with me, I had never heard of it, of course, but I have experienced it on several occasions through you. And it is pretty amazing. I'm looking at the date right now, and the first time I experienced it was last year, the day after the insurrection. So that would have been January 7th, 2021. And I had already signed up for it. I didn't know how much I was going to be needing it, but I remember thinking when we were about halfway through, I thought I needed this so much. I just had no idea. And then experiencing it again through you after I moved. Again, the timing of it was just wonderful. You invited me to it. I was like, oh yes, please. That would be amazing. So I'm just going to put a little plug for my listeners. If you are interested in finding out more, then Marianne is the one to talk to about that, because she's amazing and gentle and makes you feel very much cared for in the process. And it really is an amazing technique. And so you and this is when you've made this decision and you've decided to become a sophrologist, were you already doing the wellness mentoring, the wellness facilitating, or how did that all fit in together?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to start working for myself and in this sort of wellness world. And so I started putting a program together. I was working with a business mentor at the time, and I was working on a program. And as I was doing so, I wanted to bring in some of the guided visualizations that I had experienced in my sophrology sessions. And then that got me down the rabbit hole of maybe becoming a certified sophrologist. And I had enough, like in France, there's this point system. When you work a full-time job, you get points for professional development. And so I had enough points to pretty much cover the cost of that training. And I thought, why don't I take advantage of that? That would be helpful. And so, yeah, I had already started working with clients, and then I started my sophrology training. And then I met you just after I finished that training.
I was trying to think where in that process that we met, but it was very much close to that. And that's so interesting, because when I think of whenever we were in each other's orbit, I really thought that I didn't realize the sophrology really came first. So, that was really the seed that was planted first. And you have some very incredible, you do the creative walking tours, so amazing. And so there's other things that people can participate in with you for sure. But I love now that I see the connection with all that is, oh yeah, that's sophrology. That's a piece of sophrology in almost everything that you do. And so I'm just thinking, one thing that I love to do is think about this golden thread that kind of weaves through all of our lives and all the twists and turns and the ups and downs. And now you even have a channel on, I don't know if they call it channels, but you're on Insight Timer. So now people can, subscribe to that and get some of your visualizations and your meditations. And I just wonder how much of performing and then just how everything has influenced and informed the next decisions that you make. And I'm wondering have you ever thought of that, or do you see it yourself?
I definitely see the threads of my voice, like having trained as a singer and now using my voice in sophrology, like with guided meditations and whatnot, that I'm still using my voice. So there's that for sure. And then there's also this creative side as well. I always like to bring a bit of creativity into my work. And I really enjoy creating experiences for people and creating connections. So I'm not sure if there's anything beyond that, but those are for sure a couple of different threads that have been woven in amongst all the different things I've done in my life. Yeah. I think of too the experience of the marketing and communications, how you use that, and then also teaching and how much teaching has come into play. It takes something to be able to stand up in front of class, whether it's in person or even online, and to be able to hold that space for your students, so to speak, or clients in this case. Yeah. And that is, you're right there, because teaching, you have an audience of students in front of you, and you have to hold that space. You have to capture their attention. And then the same thing, like when we would give concerts, sometimes we'd speak to the audience between pieces or at the end. And so it was that same thing, and getting over yourself. And there's 2,000 people in the audience, and now you're going to go to the microphone and talk to them. And so definitely those things have come in handy as I've been hosting sophrology sessions online. And also you can do live sessions on Insight Timer. And I can't see the people. I can see their little bubbles when they write in the chat, but I can see how many people are on. And so, there can be hundreds of people attending a live session.
Wow.
And having that energy of being the person that everybody's watching. I think definitely teaching and singing have both helped that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Most definitely. Marianne, your story is just so inspiring. And I know usually this question is part of the Midlife Hot Flash, which we're getting ready to go to, but I think I'm going to pull this question out and I wonder if you have any words of advice or something that you would like to say to women in these middle years who are thinking about starting something new and maybe forging a new path. Is there any words of wisdom that you could share?
Yeah, definitely tuning into what your heartfelt desires are is so important. And it has to be really those true desires from that place of peace within. Sometimes we can have grand ideas, but there can be different things behind it. I want to make my 6 figures, or I don't know, whatever it is, like it could be materialistic or whatever. And so really tuning into what you want and knowing that when you decide to do something, it's hard to know what it's going to look like. And you can't necessarily know all the steps it's going to take for it to happen. And sometimes you just need to courageously take the first step, or even take the first leap off the cliff a little bit, and just know that the next steps will come and you'll discover them in time. And I know that as I've been working on my business, I could never have imagined doing what I'm doing now. I don't think even 2 or 3 years ago, I could have known what it would look like exactly. And it's something that's come organically through taking the next step, following my curiosity, hiring people with whom I felt there was a connection and it felt like it was the right decision. So just really following my gut and my heart. There is some daring and some courage needed for sure, but you can always figure things out. Marie Forleo, she says, things are figure outable. And I really do believe that. And you don't need to figure everything out right from the start. It can be a step-by-step process.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like that's a place where people get stuck, where they feel like they need to know all the steps. They need to know all the instructions, and then they'll start. But unfortunately, it's not like that. You have to take a step, and then you discover your next step, and then the next. And maybe at one point you'll figure out the next 5 steps, but people want that path, that golden path to be lit up for them. But actually the steps light up when you take the first step. So it's a definite mind shift there, and it definitely is courageous. And I am drawn back to when you said you were looking for a job in France, and you stated you knew you wanted to work with music. You knew you wanted to have something with singing. You had these points that you just, I feel like this goes to, even though in my world, the world manifestation gets us so many different things for so many people, and in the way that you're very clear on what you want. You're setting your intention for what you want and your actions. And then there you go. You didn't know what it would look like, but it led you into a very important next step in your career and onto your business.
Yeah. And none of the steps that I took along the way have been, I haven't regretted them, because they all lead to the next thing. And I love where I am now, and I wouldn't be here now without all of those previous steps.
And you have your house in France, just like you said, when you were 20 something years old. So,
exactly. Yeah. No, it's fabulous.
That's awesome. That's so amazing. Yeah. Okay, Marianne. So like I alluded to just a couple minutes ago, are you ready for your midlife hot flash?
Oh, goodness.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, no one, this is the only type of hot flash everybody likes. So basically this is 60 seconds and to answer 10 questions, but I already pulled out 1 question. So actually we only have 9 questions to answer. So let's go. So the first question, tea or coffee?
Oh, both. Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. Favorite all-time band or musician?
Oh, goodness. There's so many. I always love Steely Dan. I always get a big smile when I listen to Earth, Wind and Fire. But I have so many different composers all through the centuries that I love.
Yeah. As a music person, then I could see that for sure. Favorite dessert?
Anything with lemon. I love lemon meringue pie, lemon flan.
Nice. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to work in a greenhouse. I wanted to record records. I wanted to be an interior designer. And I think that's about it.
Yeah. One of those multi-passionate young women, just like me. What is your current self-indulgence?
There is a pool near my village here in the middle of nowhere, France. And they have a sauna, hammam, and jacuzzi area. And I buy a card so that I can go there whenever I want. And I just love spending an hour or two in the warmth, in the heat.
That sounds lovely. What is inspiring you right
now? It's the countryside, it's nature, it's really getting out for walks. That is really, I'm spending a lot of time, just creatively going for walks and tuning into everything around me. And I'm finding that really grounding at the moment.
Yeah. What do you hope people say about you when you leave? Oh, that Marianne, she is.
Oh dear. When first of all, I'm a bit of an introvert, but I'd like them to say that they feel that I'm supportive, but also creative and maybe a little bit determined.
Those are great things. All right, the very last one. If you could be any animal for one day, what would you be and why?
I think either a sea creature or something in the air, just because I live on Earth and I don't live in the air or in the water. So maybe either a whale or like a dolphin or something. That would be nice to glide through the water.
Yeah.
Or like a bird flying in the air.
So many parts I could dive in there. So what were you going to say? Yeah.
No, I was just going to say just today, like it was a super windy day here today and I went for a walk. And I saw this hawk just riding the wind, just hovering. And I thought, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. Surfing, but up in the air.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. That's one of my favorite questions. I ask my clients that on their intake form, and we dive into the answers. So today we're not going to dive in, but a lot of beautiful imagery there, gliding in the air or gliding through the water. So with a lot of ease. So I love that. Marianne, thank you so much. And I just loved hearing your story. I loved you sharing your story. And I know that people will be inspired by what you shared. So I'm really glad to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really fun.
One thing that I forgot to ask when we were having our conversation was how people could connect with Marianne. Be sure to go to the show notes as well as the episode description for all the links to connect with her. You can find her on Instagram at Marianne Kleer, also on Insight Timer, and her website is mariannedecleer.com. She also offers a year of creative walking tours. And when you follow her on Instagram, you'll be able to find hashtags of other people who are doing the walking tours. It's such a wonderful experience. I hope this conversation inspires you to tune into your intuition, to really listen to what she's saying. And I hope that by doing that, you follow those maybe someday dreams. You know, those things that you said, oh yeah, maybe someday I'll get to that. Well, you know something? There's no better time than today. Be sure to join us for the next episode of the How They Got Started series when we speak with Diane Diaz, who has so much to share, even about learning new things, like learning to swim right before she turned 40, and her experience in completing the Florida Ironman triathlon at age 47, and what in the world would compel her to do so.